What's going on, people? It's your favorite podcast of the week. Maybe, maybe not. I'm Dylan Denmark. I got Graham Marsh setting up the iPad right now on the Facebook page. Before we start, make sure you're subscribing to the 1010XL Gator and Jaguar channels. Like we said the previous episode, we have a lot of content that'll be headed your way, I would say around training camp. So make sure you know that content is going to be accessible to you. Graham, what'd it do? It's been a week since we've talked.
What it do, baby? What's going on?
Jags got a stadium deal.
Yeah.
The Jags this has probably been their best offseason ever since before we were born.
If you're talking like big picture, yes.
Yeah.
If you're talking big picture, it's probably the best offseason in the history of the team.
Yes, not even a question. We're going to get to the Jags later, but we're going to start off the show talking about the Gators, Graham. And, Friday afternoon, we're both in our mid-20s. You're 26, I'm 26. And, a lot of people like to run the beach bars and Jacksonville and do a lot of things. Well, I like to go through the YouTube archives and look at what Gator glory was back in the day.
Yeah.
So it was Friday afternoon. I'm just sitting at my dad's house just chilling. And Florida Miami pops up on my YouTube algorithm. And I forgot how great the intro was for that game. Whoever the director was for ESPN or designed that needs to, we didn't know who that person was, and they need to make sure they knew they do Gator games this season for ESPN or ABC. Florida Miami in 2008 was week 2. Florida had just played Miami. They had beaten them, and Florida was on the rise because they had just had a 9-3 season. They had lost the bowl game to Michigan, but they had all this returning talent. And they show the stadium. They show 2 bits before the game. They show all the players.
The OG Mr. 2 bits. Yes. The real Mr. 2 bits.
Yeah, not the honorary ones they have now. And I was just thinking about how electric that crowd was and how the Swamp used to be. People our age don't fully understand that in the 90s, I think Spurrier only lost 6 games in the 11 years that he was there, I think.
Yeah.
He didn't lose. He started there in 90, didn't lose until 94 to Auburn, and then didn't lose again until 99.
Yeah.
And then lost a couple toward the end of his career. And the same thing with Urban. And I'm getting to thinking about this season. Everybody's talking about it's a brutal schedule, and it is, and yada, 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 and November is a murderous row. If Florida wants to be successful, and everybody's pretty much assuming, with the national media right now, for Florida to have a successful season, you got to be at least 6-6. If it's 5-7, it's not going to be good. And that's, just guesstimating right now in the middle of the summer. If you look at the schedule, these are the games you have at home. And the games you have at home, you have more control over. And the games you probably should win more than being on the road. Miami, A&M, UCF, Kentucky, LSU. And I'm not even talking about November. The more I think about it, Miami's a game. I hate to say that it's going to make or break your season because it's not. You can make up for it, like we saw last year with Utah. You lose, you didn't get out good week 1, but then you start to get a couple wins, and if you felt good going into the Georgia game. But the more I think about it, Graham, I'm just thinking from the Gators' perspective. If you go out the gate 0-1. There's going to be a lot of people that are unhappy, and I think it could matriculate into something that's not good for the rest of the season.
And for Florida fans and Florida boosters and people that more so the fans because of the general noise that it'll create, but more so the boosters, the people that actually have some say-so in what goes on behind closed doors, what they can kind of force Scott Strickland's hand if they need to in certain situations. Losing on the road at Utah is a much easier pill to swallow than losing at home to Miami, right? Because if you live in this part of the country, if you're from this part of the country, if you grew up a Florida fan, if you went to Florida, know people went to Florida, whatever, and that's, your veins bleed orange and blue, then 99+% chance that some Miami fans. It's personal to you. You know those people. Versus Utah, I mean, how many of us really knew a lot of Utah fans going into those games? They were great games, and it was cool to play a cross-conference thing, and you were playing a quality opponent week 1, 2 years in a row. Obviously, the game you and I went to, the game that was here in Gainesville 2 years ago, and Anthony Richardson was God that day. And the Swamp was the Swamp, and it was a fantastic game, and Florida wins. And obviously last year they go out there and lay an egg pretty much. The final score wasn't that bad, but it was an ugly game. The Gators looked horrible the whole game.
Offensively, specifically.
Yeah. Procedural errors, 2 number 3s on the field, couldn't get snaps. It was bad.
6
really
minutes
bad.
left. You're down 2 possessions, no tempo.
In games that matter, I would say that game and the Arkansas game at home last year were the two worst losses of the Napier era in terms of like the biggest indictments on him. Would you agree?
Yes, 100%. The Arkansas game, that can't happen.
I know a lot of people will probably point to the Vanderbilt game in 2022, and there's an argument to be had. It's Vanderbilt. You can't lose to Vanderbilt. I totally understand that. With Vanderbilt, I felt like it was a bigger indictment on the defense specifically, and the defensive coordinator back then and how they were playing. I thought that side of the ball played poorly. I thought Anthony Richardson didn't play very well that day. They scored points, but he didn't play that well. And anyway, I'm getting too deep in the weeds in that game, but those 2 games were the biggest indictments on Billy Napier so far. If more games like that happen this year, then this podcast will be talking about a new coach this time next year. So let's get back to this Miami game that we talked about. You and I were talking off air before that we're pretty much in agreement that, you hate to say it's a must win. You hate to say that week 1, or I guess week 0 in a lot of ways can define your season, but it can. There is time to make up for it, to your point, but man, it's a deep hole to climb out of for the loser, and man, you get to sit pretty for the winner.
Yeah, I mean, within the last week, we had Max Chadwick on PFF College Football. He says Miami has the most talented roster in the ACC. And then Phil Steele in his preseason top 40, he has Miami ranked 10th. So, I mean, every year you have a national darling that's been good in the past, but that hasn't been good lately. Like we've seen it with Texas before they had Sark. We've seen it from USC a lot of years.
Texas has been the poster child for this last
Miami is the team this year. Everybody believes that Ward is going to be good for the quarterback. The running back is really good that they got. I forget his name, that they transferred in. And they believe that those 2 guys are going to be the 1-2 punch, and Miami's going to be really good.
Restrepo is a really good wide receiver. They've got a really good offensive line. The trenches on both sides of the ball are the biggest reason for fear, in my opinion, from the Gator side of things. There's a world where Miami dominates them up front pretty heavily on both sides, in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely can happen. I mean, Florida's undersized of the offensive line. But the more I just thinking about this game, and perspective can change. We want to build everything up to week 1 because, in college football, we have 8-9 months off. I mean, the last time the Gators played was Thanksgiving.
Right.
And we build everything into this one game. And, things change throughout the season. Miami could go 8-4, and we're like, you could lose to them. You're like, it's not that good. But you could lose to Miami, and Miami could go 10-1. Then you're like, this wasn't that bad. Now, I mean, that really doesn't happen. You don't really get that sense in the moment in September and in early October, but that can still change as the season goes. But I still think it's hard to say right now, but if you had to say name one win that Florida has to get on their schedule, one win.
It's Miami.
I think it's Miami, and it's not even a close second.
It's not. It's really not. And I think every Gator fan that understands the implications of it being an in-state rival, of it being a team that you consistently battle against for recruits, of it being a huge temperature taker of where the program stands for Billy Napier and Mario Cristobal. And by the way, I think if you asked every Miami fan, they'd say the same thing. They would say that the Florida game's arguably the most important game.
I think Miami has more pressure than Florida to win the game.
Okay, so it's interesting to say that because I disagree, but
okay,
make your case and I'll make mine.
I think Miami. How many games are on Miami's schedule that say we have to win this game?
2.
Okay, and how many?
Florida and Florida State.
Okay, yeah, and that's it. And Florida has like 5, 6, 7. So Florida, at least they can recover from it. I don't know if Miami can. It's hard to say recover, but Miami can go 10-2 and make the playoff very easily because of the schedule that they have, because they're in the ACC. Florida can still recover somehow, some way with the schedule that they have.
See, I view it the opposite way.
So I think you're looking at it more from the fans' perspective and the pressure that the loser gets.
Well, I'm looking at it more from the fact that if Miami loses, Miami's 0-1 at the end of that game, there is still a very good chance. Like you said, people are saying they have the best roster in the ACC. And that's not Florida State fans are going to disagree with that, and I would probably put Florida State ahead of them roster-wise as well.
Lost a lot.
They did lose a lot. I would personally put Florida State ahead of them, but outside of Florida State, you're kind of debating there, but outside of them, they do have the best roster in the ACC. Probably. I mean, Clemson, maybe you can argue, but
yeah, we don't know.
I wouldn't say. Anyways, the point is, the vast majority of their opponents after Florida, you can argue they should win those games. So, Miami, granted, they won't be signature. I think where you're coming from is Florida can get signature wins after the fact that make the fans.
You can make up for
that
it.
will give the fans amnesia and forget about the game.
Correct.
Right? So, and that's fair. I just think it's a slipperier slope. Because if Florida loses to Miami, which is a winnable game, particularly because it's in the swamp, then it's like, oh my God, now I got to play A&M. Oh my God, now I got to play UCF. Oh my God, now I got to play Tennessee.
And those then feel like games you can't lose.
Correct. So for Florida, losing to Miami and starting the season 0-1 can quickly turn into 2-3, 2-4. Can quickly turn into an ugly looking record before they even kick off at the cocktail party. We've kind of acknowledged that as sort of a baseline.
That's the benchmark.
With the season. Miami, it's more than likely, even if they lose that game, they'll still end up with a good record. They'll still end up being, you'll look up midway through the season, they'll be, maybe 4-2, 5-2. It'll be a more respectable record. I don't disagree with you that it will be hard for Miami because there's not a lot of games after that where they can make up like however far they would fall in like AP rankings, then eventually the playoff rankings when they come out later in the season. There are less games for them to make up gaps. So I agree with you there. I just think in terms of Mario Cristobal and narrative and pressure, even if he loses to Florida, if he's got a pretty clean looking record midway through and then late into the year, he's going to be better off than if Billy Napier loses that game and it gets compounded with loss to A&M, loss to Tennessee, loss to Kentucky, loss. You see what I'm saying? It's just a slipperier slope if you're the Gators.
Yeah, and I mean, if Florida wins this game, you can build momentum. Then you could, you have Stanford the following week, and then you go A&M, and then you can get it rolling. I'm looking at the first before the Georgia game, the games that are at home. I think that's where Florida has their successful season.
Agree.
It's Miami. It's A&M. A&M has a brand new coach. You don't know what they are. It's Kentucky. You haven't beaten Kentucky. It's LSU. You haven't beaten LSU since Joe Burrow threw that pick six in 2018 in Dan Mullen's first year. Think about that. That's 4 games where it's Miami and State, it's A&M, it's Kentucky, LSU.
And then you throw in Samford.
Right.
Which you assume they're going to win. They should. That's 5 games. What do you think they need 4-1?
At least.
There.
If you're 3-2, it's.
If you're 3-2, it's going to be real hard to make up those wins elsewhere.
It's one of those where, we've talked about the UCF game a lot and what that means. And Florida has a bye week before UCF, which can help a lot. That's another team that I forgot to mention. Because once you get after UCF and things don't look good, fans stop showing up, and your boosters, not so much our age, but I remember when Jim McElwain was the coach, and he still had a good record. I got tickets almost every home game from a booster that was up in his 70s. He's like, yeah, I don't care to go anymore. McElwain's not that good,
apathy
and the record was fine, but the product that you put out on the field isn't good, and you know that's not sustainable once you face a good team.
Right.
That's where, so you have to win, you have to control the controllables, and you have to win at home. That's where you start to me. And, Napier doesn't look at it, coaches don't look at it from a broad standpoint of, okay, we got to do this. It's one game at a time. I like a week 1. I'm going into camp. This is what we got to do. We got Miami week 1. That's how they look at it.
It's a good thing you're wearing your Baldwin shirt today because that's the most coach thing you've ever said.
It's true.
We got to control the controllables.
Control the controllables.
It does not get more coach than that. I could see. I've pictured you talking to a bunch of high school sprinters when you were saying control the controllables. I agree with basically everything you just said. We disagree on kind of the splitting hairs of who there's more pressure on, but we know from the macro perspective, it's an enormous game for both teams. The Florida-Miami game specifically. Andy Staples calls it the Pitchforks and Torches Bowl because whoever loses, the fan base is going to be very, very, very upset. I've heard other people call it the Anxiety Bowl.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I want to refer to it, and then I want to get into some stuff I wrote down here. I want to refer to it as the Narrative Bowl because there's a couple different ways this game can turn out where a certain narrative will be the case for both squads. And we're saying both teams. We really mean both coaches. We really mean Billy Napier and Mario Cristobal. Those are the two guys whose jobs are on the line here with this game, right? Not like literally on the line, but you get the point. Okay, I want to take you through a couple scenarios with this game. Let's say when the game's said and done, teams are walking off the field. It's a close Miami win. They win by 3 points or less. What is the narrative coming out of that game for both teams?
Florida falls short. Miami escapes if it's a close game, and things aren't looking good for Billy.
Okay. Are fans furious at Billy? Are they just disappointed, but not? This is the thing. Not all hope is lost?
I have to see the game because it's. Yeah. Okay, Billy's an offensive guy. Is Graham Mertz playing well? Is the defense still playing trash? Is Miami playing lights out and we're competing with them, or is it a bad product and then we fall short?
Was there a blown call? In the game.
Right.
Yeah, no, I hear you. There's context to be added, but just from a macro perspective.
If Florida loses and they fall short, I think they'll be okay with it, but they'll be okay with it knowing that they competed with probably what most people are saying, one of the best teams in the country, going at least into the season. But most fans still won't be happy.
What about Miami?
If they lose?
No, if they win. If they win like a...
Oh, they'll be ecstatic. They'll be on cloud nine.
I think so, too. Okay. Close Florida win, 3 points or less. Is it the same thing, just flipped?
Yeah, Florida fans will be ecstatic. Miami fans will be, why are we hiring this guy? Why do we get this guy? It's year 3. We brought in this good quarterback, this good running back. We got all this talent. We're supposed to be good. This is supposed to be our year, and we can't beat Florida, who's had 2 losing records.
See, I think maybe not fans. Fans might be, because fans aren't rational like this, but I think the powers that be in Miami may have a little more patience if Miami loses close, especially if the Swamp is rocking. It's a great atmosphere. Cam Ward's first game in Miami.
I think it will be.
Yeah, 100%. It's not going to be a great look for Cristobal, but I think he can survive the narrative if it's a close game. They barely lose. They're competitive the whole time. That type of thing. Versus, I think if Florida loses close, and that kind of gets to the next thing that I'm about to point out, I almost don't know if it matters if Florida loses by 3 or by 20. Do you agree with me, or do you disagree? Maybe not 20. 20 is probably aggressive, but 3 or 10.
Right, or 17. I could see where you're standing on that point.
Yeah, I almost get the sense that
it doesn't matter. You have to win this game regardless of what. And this is another thing too. Cristobal played at Miami. He knows how big of a game this is.
Yeah, of course.
Napier, I don't know how much of it matters, but I don't know if, like we've said a couple weeks ago, the best coaches kind of resemble some of their fan base.
Yeah.
Cristobal resembles our fan base because he played there. He knows what it's like. He knew what it was like when they were good. I don't know if Napier understands how big of a game this is, just from the standpoint of the hatred of Florida. Oh, Florida could have played Miami back in the day. They ducked them, or vice versa. It's all that, he said type of thing. I don't know if Napier understands that that part from the fan base, which kind of adds to this rivalry. That's not really a rivalry because we don't play each other as much lately.
Okay. What if Miami wins in blowout fashion? They win 14 or more.
Nobody's showing up to Sanford. No one's showing up to A&M.
Disaster,
Yeah,
right?
It's bad.
Disaster. I think if I would maybe go as far to say if Miami like murders Florida, and particularly you know this as well as I do. There's a lot of games that might be a 10 to 14 point win by one team, but it's closer than that. Maybe they score a touchdown late at the end, whatever. Teams pressing, throw a pick six or something, trying to force it because they know they got to get down the field, that type of thing. And then there's more dominant 14, 17, 20-point wins. If it's a game where, like, start to finish, Miami is in the driver's seat, they're in control, Florida's reeling the whole time, I would maybe venture as far to say that, because that's going to be indicative of what's going to happen weeks to come after that, I would venture as far to say that I would probably not think Billy will be the coach by the Georgia game.
Yeah, I was going to say UCF. Like, it's Miami. If you look bad against Miami in a blowout fashion and, you're okay for the rest of September, and then once you get to UCF and you lose to UCF, you might get on the chopping board then.
Yeah, especially because you'll have lost to two games that where it's personal to Gator fans. Well, it's not just the fact that you're losing the games; it's the fact that you're losing to games where it stings extra.
Well, and it's in-state, and it's the recruiting factor, and all those other things.
100%.
I mean, and those are two programs that, for the last 20 years, you've been better than.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to give Napier the time, and you got to build these guys. Okay, you got your guys now. It's year 3, which, by the way, they're your guys once you get there year 1, but you can get a pass. It's year 3. You got to win.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's no excuses. Like, there's not one, barring injury. Barring a Graham Mertz injury or something significant.
So you and I are both in agreement here that if Florida goes in the two early in-state games, the Miami and the UCF game, particularly given that they're both in the swamp, Florida goes 0-2 in those games.
There's no shot he keeps his job.
No shot.
There's not a shot.
Totally agree.
I don't care if you beat Kentucky, LSU, and I don't care if you win the rest of those games.
Totally agree.
No person that spends their money regularly on game day is going to keep defending Billy Napier.
I agree. Every last supporter is gone at that point. If you lost to Miami already and then you lose to UCF, it is over. It's the Billy Napier experience. Everything is over. Okay, this is maybe the more different one we haven't really talked about yet. What if Florida kills Miami? What if it's a blowout? And Swamp gets rocking early. Florida, I think the path to this type of game, I don't think this is this game's going to be close to me, but the path to this type of game happening, Swamp is going crazy. It's electric early, and Florida starts fast. Maybe they get a Eugene Wilson busts a big run or a big catch or like a 50-yard touchdown or something, and Cam Ward throws an early pick. And the first quarter is a disaster for Miami, and then it just snowballs. That's the way that a game like that would happen. Say Florida wins 31-17, and they're in the driver's seat the whole time. They're up by 10 plus most of the game. Let's start with Miami. What's the Miami narrative at the end of that?
Cristobal's not good, mostly.
And
then Florida side, it's more of, okay, how good are we? How good can we be? You're probably looking at one loss going into the Georgia game if you really think that Miami is what they are. Because if you do that in Miami, then you're thinking, okay, we should beat UCF, we should beat Kentucky, we should beat A&M, and then the only game that's a coin flip is the LSU game.
In Tennessee.
What? Yeah, Tennessee. I forgot about Tennessee. Yeah, the two coin flip games were then Tennessee and LSU.
If Florida dominates Miami, and look, we've talked about this before, this is the time of year to be objective and look at things from 10,000 feet and kind of talk about, what we realistically think will happen with certain things. When the season comes and things kick off, people get emotional. They react to things emotionally. Hand up, I am guilty of said thing. Dylan knows this. He's been to many games with me. I am a very emotional person when I watch football. If Florida murders Miami, if it's not close and they kick their ass up and down the field the whole game, I'm saying that they're going to beat everybody on their schedule before Georgia except possibly Tennessee. I'd still probably pick Tennessee to beat them in Knoxville. But if they kill Miami, I think they're beating A&M. I think they're beating UCF. I think they're beating LSU. I think they're beating all of them. If that happens, I don't think that's going to happen. If that happens, though, I'm going to be lying my ass off. You best believe.
Well, it's kind of like go back to when Florida beat Utah week 1 2 years ago.
Oh, God, yeah.
We beat them. We knew Utah was a good team. And we're walking out of that stadium thinking, like, damn, like we got a dude at quarterback and we can beat anybody anytime.
Man, I thought we had Cam Newton on the roster.
We essentially kind of did.
Dude, I
kind of sort of did.
Man, the lies I was telling at that point, man, walking out of that stadium, shoo.
And then that lasted a week until we lost to Kentucky.
Man,
that's what happens. Like,
yeah,
like I said, you wait all this time for week 1, then week 1 happens, and then it's kind of the pendulum swings completely one way or the other off of one game. Then you got to replicate and do it again.
Yeah. All right. So we just went through a myriad of possibilities if the game goes a certain way. Dylan Denmark, you're a much more objective person than I. Realistically, you're walking out of the stadium. The game's over.
Week 1?
The game's over week 1. Realistically, what do you believe you will have just seen that transpired?
A close game, and Miami wins by 3 or 7 right now.
Okay.
If I had to put my money on it, I think Miami wins a close one. And that's as of late June. I'll probably change my mind about 10, 15 times from now to then, but I'd probably say Miami wins.
And you probably do the same thing, but when I walk out of a stadium after a win or a loss, more so losses, in my head I think of that play in the third quarter, that pass interference call in the second quarter, the holding call. I think of the touchdown or in the first quarter, early in the game. I think of these little moments throughout the game that I feel like contributed to the final score. What will be the reasons Miami will have pulled out on top?
Well, I was reading a magazine, Athlon Sports. Florida was almost one of the worst teams in the country, not just the SEC, in turnover margin. So if Florida falls short, it's probably because they don't force turnovers, probably because Miami gets out to an early lead. They take the crowd out of it a little bit. And then I think Miami just does enough to get by and win the game. Because I do think at some point the crowd will be a factor, and Florida will score. If I had to guess right now, I think the game's in the mid-20s, like 28-24-ish. And Miami just makes a play or two more that Florida doesn't.
So with the turnover thing, you think it's going to be more about Florida not forcing turnovers?
Correct. Yeah.
As opposed to Florida turning the ball over.
I think Florida doesn't create turnovers on defense to give the offense a good situation to score.
Mm-hmm. Because when you were saying turnovers at first, I was thinking, well, I trust Mertz for the most part to take care of the ball. I don't disagree, though, that I am a little worried kind of from a macro perspective. Defensively, I am a little worried this year about where the turnovers come from. I think they're a better defense on paper.
It can't be any worse.
They definitely can't be worse. I think in the secondary, they have more trustworthy players across the board. Like, I'm less worried this year about giving up the 60-yard bomb and, blown coverages and just leaving dudes wide open. But I don't know where pick sixes come from. I don't know where a lot of strip sacks come from, unless L.J. McCray really blossoms right off the bat. I feel better about this defense not being just a complete disaster, but I think I do agree with you that I don't know where a lot of explosive defensive plays.
Yeah, and I mean, last year Florida pretty much led the country in playing the most true freshmen. I think they played 10 or 11 or 12, which is a lot. I mean, we always talk about the portal. The reason why a lot of these teams are good is because they use a portal and they take a guy coming out of a college program that's 21, 22 instead of a 17, 18-year-old, a guy that's coming out of a high school weight room, which is vastly different.
Man, I was talking to Hayes Carline about this yesterday. You look at, so what is the position on defense where being out of position is the most costly?
I always say line of scrimmage, so I go D-line.
See, I think it's safety. If you're out of position of safety, man, you're giving up bombs. But we can debate that either way. It doesn't really matter. But what I'm saying is, you would agree with me that it's important for safeties to know where the hell to be and be in the right spot, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback's first read is, where's the safety?
Yeah, correct. Last year, most of the season, they started 2 true freshmen at safety. Miguel Mitchell and who's their safety?
It wasn't Wilcoxon from IMG.
No. He's back, and he's going to be really good. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
The internet will tell
Jordan
me.
Castell.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Apologies, Jordan. I'm picturing your face,
Number
but
14, right?
Yeah. Miguel Mitchell transferred, but Jordan Castell is back, and he started the whole season, so he has a full season under his belt now. He was one of those true freshmen starting last year. Now he's a guy he was one of the few guys that did make plays last year. Was out of position a couple times, but made plays as well. I trust him to be better. He has a full season of SEC experience under his belt now, with the same defensive coordinator, what we hope to be an improved DB's coach. And your other safety is going to be Asa Turner from Washington, who has played an absurd amount of college football.
And this all adds to, okay, Billy, you've wanted to do things your way. We've let you do what you want to do. Okay, now this is the year. You want to play all your freshmen last year. You don't want to dip your toe into the portal and get a lot of guys. Okay, these are your guys. You've developed them. Okay, now let's see it. Now let's see the
Experience
product.
is not an excuse anymore.
Right.
And then you look at corner. This will be year 4 for Jason Marshall.
He's been there a while.
Been there, yes, correct. This will be year 4 for him.
So he was there the same year with Kyrie Elam?
Yes.
That's wild to think about.
Jason Marshall's first season was 2021. So 2021, 21 season,
last
22
year.
season, 23 season. This is the 4th, 24 season. I think it's Triquez Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting from Oregon. He's played a lot of college football.
Denson from Bartram.
Sharif Denson has played a lot of college football. Sharif Denson is probably your starting nickel, I would assume. You've got dudes, man. You've got dudes that should be able to play. At DB now, again, they were very young last year. No one really had any experience besides Jason Marshall. You've got dudes that have played college football now across the board in the secondary. There's no excuse that we've talked about on offense. The biggest issue is procedural things, not being able to get the snap off, that type of thing. If that happens, that's a huge indictment on Napier, and that's a problem. On defense, the biggest problem, in my opinion, is if they're out of position again, giving up huge plays,
you're cooked.
Giving up 4th and 17s to Missouri with the game on the line, that's inexcusable. That's the other side of the ball. That will get the coaching staff out of here.
Speaking of guys, Florida got a commit yesterday. I forget his friggin' name. From Pembroke Pines down in Fort Lauderdale, down in Miami. He's a number 9 receiver in the country. He's a 4-star. So, kind of like me and you were talking about yesterday, the shrimp game on 10-10 day. It's amazing that Billy Napier has had a losing record in the last 2 years, and yet he's still able to get a lot of good recruits.
Joshua Moore.
Okay, that's right. But it's incredible that he's still able to get these guys and get what's now considered the blue chip guys. I mean, what is Billy selling to these guys? Because obviously it's not the on-field product. Like, what's he selling them? And don't give me the facilities. Like, everybody's got facilities. You don't tell me, the
facilities were just to level the playing field when Florida was playing from behind.
And the facilities talk was just 2009, 2010, 2011. Nobody cares about that junk no more.
Facilities were, I think they were a big deal later than that. I think like 2015, 16, 17 facilities mattered. When facilities got negated and almost taken completely out of the equation as long as they're usable was NIL. Because Ole Miss has done this as well as anybody. Ole Miss said, okay, instead of pouring all this money we're getting into new facilities, because in the past we haven't been able to pay these guys, at least legally pay these guys, and so we've had to impress them with all these bells and whistles we have, let's just offer them cash directly in their pocket with NIL. And that's where it's going. Florida, I would say, after the Gator Collective fiasco and what happened with Jaden Rashada and all that, which everyone's well aware of, now with for a year plus now with Florida victorious, that they have their stuff together. Everything's been rock solid in terms of getting guys the NIL money that they deserve and making sure everything's ironed out and making sure contracts are actually followed through, and all that stuff seems to be spick and span now from Florida victorious. So they've got the collective going for them. They have a facility going for them. At least they're not way behind like they used to be. It's not the reason that guys are committing anymore, but at least Florida's not far behind like they used to be. They're at least up to speed, facility-wise, and ahead.
And they have their own facility where they don't have to walk from the swamp across the street, past the basketball court to the practice facility, which is absurd.
Correct.
In the last 10 years.
And you're putting recruits on golf carts across the campus, see all this stuff and all that. So anyway, man, I think Billy, I honestly think the most simple answer to what you're asking with what is he selling is I think even coming into the job, I think he's a very good recruiter, and I think he's hired a good staff to recruit.
But I think recruiting doing but what's he selling to them?
I think
because you're a salesman. So what are you selling?
What he's selling is, first and foremost, and Mike Norvell did this after a few poor seasons to start at Florida State, the first thing he's selling is you're going to play. He's selling playing time, first and foremost.
I agree there.
He's saying, look, man, like LJ McCray. Look, LJ, if you go to Georgia or something, it might take a season or two for you to get on the field because they got so many dudes that are going to be first-round picks in the NFL draft coming up. At Florida, we need you to play today. We need you to play right now. So that's number one, is he's selling playing time, I think, more than anything. With the new recruits, with Joshua Moore, for example, and he literally said as much after he committed, I think to receivers and running backs and linemen, and particularly the guys on the offensive side of the ball, he's selling DJ Lagway. He's selling, look, man, we've got a year with Graham Mertz, who we trust, reliable, part of the system. We know what he's doing, and he can groom DJ Lagway for a season, let him learn the ropes of college football, get his feet beneath him, what have you. And then if you want to come play receiver here, if you want to come be an offensive lineman here, if you want to come be a running back here, we got a generational quarterback that we're going to build around, and you're part of that being built. You want to be a receiver? How about having one of the most explosive quarterback recruits of the last couple of years throwing you the ball? That sounds pretty damn good to me. And I know DJ's got to get on the field. He's got to produce. None of this has actually happened yet. But you're asking me what he's selling? That's what he's selling.
Yeah, you could definitely sell that to a 16, 17, 18-year-old.
In my opinion, just kind of seeing what's going on here behind the scenes and sort of just figuring out what I think they're kind of trying to do in terms of talent acquisition, it seems like at the really key positions, your main guys on defensive line, getting after the quarterback itself, offensive linemen. It seems like in those spots, they're trying to get the 5-star guys and build foundational pieces. And then obviously wherever else they can get blue chips, they're going to utilize them. And then in other spots where you need reliable guys that have played football, they're going more the portal route, right? I think Trey Wilson, you've got this blue chip guy, explosive, like different type of athlete. We said this before the last portal window, something that we felt like they were missing was a more reliable guy that's played a lot of snaps in college football, that's caught a lot of passes. Well, they go get Elijah Badger. They've done that. Now you've got the best of both worlds in that, in my opinion. On defense, you've got a guy like LJ McCray, who should be a difference maker almost right away, who, if everything goes according to plan, is going to be like a first-round pick in a couple of years. And then you've got portal guys around. You've got a portal guy at safety. You've got a portal guy at corner to make sure you're not giving up big play. Do you see what I'm saying? They're kind of piecemealing
together, one by one. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. I think, I don't know why, but I was just watching that Florida-Miami game from 2008, and I'm just thinking, from what that crowd was like, I think that crowd that we saw, how everybody's on their feet and everybody feeling like every play is like meaning everything, and you feel that a lot in week one. I think you're going to get that same feeling. And the more I thought about it throughout the week, I felt like Miami is a lot's going to be on this game. Like, we already knew that, but the more I think about it, I think like Miami's the number one game that you got to win.
You saw what happened back then. Florida has one of the best atmospheres in college football year in, year out, in my opinion. Agree or disagree?
Hands down.
Correct? Okay.
Top 5 at worst.
You saw back then what happens when one of the best environments meets a great team. We haven't been able to see that in the last couple of years. What can happen if they start winning some of those games?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, Ole Miss comes to town late in the year. I think they could win that game. That type of thing. So we'll get more into that.
Yeah, I mean, since we've already kind of went long-winded, but I mean, think about Florida wasn't that good last year, and your Florida State at home, you almost beat them. You should have. Arkansas at home, you should have beat them. It was close. Tennessee is at home, and you didn't dominate them, but you controlled them the entire game. Tennessee was pretty good last year.
That game was really never in doubt.
Yeah, so, the hope is there for Napier. It's just doing it. So, all right. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here? Any Jags talk or?
I know we were kind of briefly going to discuss Stadium, but it's been so discussed here on 1010XL.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of knows, shout out Donna Deegan's mayor's office, shout out Shah Khan, shout out Mark Lamping, all the powers that be. They did such a great job coming together, creating a plan that they had in the first place, and then putting it in front of City Council. City Council said, we don't like this, we don't like this, we don't like this. They said, okay, no problem. They take that out. And are there more things to it, like the original deal they had, that I wish would have gone down? Of course.
Like what? Just give me 2 things.
The money to help develop out east.
Okay.
And the money for an entertainment district around the stadium, which would have been, if those 2 things had stayed in the plan, then it would have been $1 billion each, City and Shad, at a $2 billion total, and they split it 50-50. Now it's 1.6 or 7, something like that, and they're splitting it to be a little bit less than $1 billion on each side. And they took out the out east money, and they took out the entertainment district. And I think the city and the Jaguars are going to continue to negotiate that type of stuff, but they understood the severity of getting the stadium itself done. So I just applaud, again, while I wish that other stuff was a part of it, and hopefully it will be in the future, I applaud them understanding where they needed to cut bait, for now at least, and make sure they get the stadium deal done. Because we all understand the severity of if Jacksonville lost the Jaguars, it would be devastating to the city. Everyone, I think political parties, people that disagree with stuff, whatever, they put the BS aside and got something done.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about politics, and something passed 14-1.
Yeah, correct. This is something everyone was able to get behind. They negotiated effectively, and there were no politics. I mean, there were politics being played, but you get what I mean. There was no mudslinging and BS and crap and people getting personal. But it was simply,
let's get this done.
We know it's got to get done. We can agree on this number. Can we do it for this number? Yes, we can. All right, let's sign the deal. Let's make it happen.
It's great to have the Jags here for another 30 years. I don't know even when it starts. If it starts in 28, if it starts in 2030.
The new stadium?
Yeah.
2028.
Okay.
The plan is this season they play in the current stadium. Next season they play in the current stadium.
27 they're gone.
26 and 27 they're gone. 2024 season, 2025 season they're in the current stadium. 26 and 7 they're either in Gainesville or Orlando, probably one of those two. Probably Gainesville, I would imagine.
I don't know.
I personally think it's
everybody that we've had on there saying Orlando.
Either way.
Not that it matters, but
they'll be away from Jacksonville those 2 years. They'll get the stadium done when 2028 kicks off. Whatever the first home game is that year, that's the first game of the new stadium.
The only thing that other than football, I just want to have a good downtown. Like,
this is step one.
I mean, like, you know more than me because you travel and been other places. I mean, like downtown, like there's nothing downtown other than the stadium, and then Daly's Places came up the last couple of years. Like we have a river downtown. Like how many people in their downtown city can say that?
And one of the main things you realize in other downtowns, like ones that are really built up, man, once you park somewhere, if you're staying in a hotel or you live there and you drive downtown or whatever, once you park a car somewhere and you go to whatever, you going to dinner, you're going to a concert, whatever you're doing, man, everything is so walkable from there. Whatever your night starts with or your day or whatever, you can walk right outside of a concert venue and go find, there'll be a strip of bars, 20 deep, that you can go explore to have fun and have a good night. Man, Jacksonville's downtown's not walkable. There's certain pockets in downtown, certain little places and stuff that you like and are fun. You got to drive to them. You might, if you're not a local, you're probably not going to know where they are. Like, versus so many of these other cities, if you go to a game, an NFL game, a college game, wherever, if it's in a real established city, you walk out of the stadium, you got stuff to do. And that's just not the case here. And that kind of gets back to the point I was just making a minute ago. I wish the other stuff that was originally in the plan would have stayed, because that's how a lot of cities have done it. That's how the Patriots developed Patriot Way. The Colts, when they built Lucas Oil, used that to help develop Indianapolis. And the whole thinking, and it makes sense, is, okay, we're building this new stadium. We're splitting it 50-50 between ownership of the team and city. Both of these entities have to be on the hook for a lot of money anyways. Let's use that to develop even more and then make ourselves even more money in the future. And city council didn't go for that. They didn't want that. I understand. I get it. You're raising the taxpayers. You're raising money for the taxpayers. I get it. But hopefully in the future, these two things, new stadium and further development of downtown, can coincide with each other.
Yeah, hopefully. In about 20 years, hopefully we can have a good downtown. We can go down there, and instead of, us West Siders having to drive 45 freaking minutes and go to the beach.
Dude, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the beach is good and all, but I mean, it's a haul. Like people ask me to go to the beach, I'm like, it's like a whole day's trip for your boy. So, all right, I'm done here. I got to go take a nap. I didn't get any sleep last night.
Take a nap, reason. Bro.
Yeah, I'm shot out. So
it's 1:10.
Yeah, well, I got a Booster Club meeting at 6, and I got to come back here for Hack Show, and then, fun stuff.
Are you a big nap guy normally?
No, but man, when I have little sleep, I just need like 20, 30 minutes, cat nap, power nap, and.
Are you a couch napper or a bed napper?
Couch.
I usually am too.
If I sleep in the bed, I'm like sleeping.
Yeah, the only time I'm a bed napper is if I'm like sick, or if I have like a giant headache. Because the only way typically to get rid of a really bad headache is sleep it off. But normally if I'm just chilling and I'm just napping because I can, or if I just need a few extra Z's, I'm a couch guy too. Yeah. You turn on some sports, whatever it may be, a talk show or something. You watch for a little bit, you doze off. 30 minutes later, you get a little extra juice.
Yeah. So that's probably what I'm going to do this afternoon. So, all right, we'll talk to y'all next week. Make sure y'all subscribe to the Gator and Jaguar channels on 1010XL. Until then, we'll see y'all next week for Dylan Denmark and Graham Marsh.